group of 5 juvenile males that we're feeding today. They're 1.5 years of age, and last year we had 18 joeys in the park, so these are 5 of the 18 joeys. Now 7 of the females, their sisters are at the top, up at the first enclosure. You might have noticed some devils around that area. And they're all half brothers and half sisters. All the 1.5-year-old juveniles have got the same dad, but they can only have 4 joeys at the same time. If you have any questions today, please feel free to ask. We'll start the feeding. So these males weigh in at around 8 kilos. When fully matured, they'll average 10 kilograms in weight. We've got one that's 13 kilos here at Natureworld. They are the largest carnivorous marsupial on the planet since the extinction of the Tasmanian tiger or the thylacine. One of their main food sources in the wild is carrion. They're mostly scavengers. It's not often that they hunt, although their closest living relative, the spotted-tailed quoll, they're an excellent predator. They can take down large prey, up to 2 times the size of their body weight. But they'll only eat the most nutritious part of the animal, like the internals, and they'll leave the rest for devils to eat. Devils eat absolutely everything: skin, fur, bones, claws. They've even found echidna quills in a devil's scat. There's not much that goes past them, which is why they're important to the ecosystem, as they prevent disease amongst other species of native wildlife by cleaning up the forest floor. They'll eat the inside parts first, that's most nutritious, and then they work their way onto the fur and bone at last. In one feeding, they can eat up to 40% of their body weight in one go, and that's like you eating a 25 kilo piece of steak. They're gorge feeders because in the wild, they don't know when their next meal is. It could be 5 minutes away, it could even be a week away, so they've got to make the most of the opportunity. If they do gorge themselves, they can go without food for some time. That one back. Wasn't given it up. Nah. You'll find devils in all parts of Tasmania, from coastal areas to mountainous areas. Devils up at places like Cradle Mountain and the Central Plateau. One of their main diets, wombat and paddymellen, a small species of wallaby. Whereas down at the coast around Bishano, it's often quite varied. They'll travel along beach tracks, finding washed up fish, crustaceans, on the occasion even a whale carcass, which will keep them going on for months on end. They're opportunists. They'll make the most of what they can find, along with feeding on small reptiles, frogs and nocturnal insects like moths. Similar to a kangaroo, they store their body fat at the base of their tail, and this balances their body out, helping them travel up to 16 k's each night in search of their food source. A Parks and Wildlife ranger once microchipped a devil up at Cradle Mountain. 2 days later was found over at Strawn on the west coast. They've got a lot of stamina behind them, considering they're a stocky animal. Their top speed's around 25 k's an hour, which definitely isn't slow, but a lot of the marsupial herbivores like wombats and wallabies can easily outrun a devil. And if you look at their body structure, you may see a similarity to the hyena. They've got a large head, strong neck and jaw muscles, a sloping back end. They share a similar running gait. The devil's head and its neck's around 35% of its body weight, which gives it a bone-crushing bite force. One of the strongest bite forces.
That's where they get their strong.
So for their body size, one of the strongest bite pressures in the animal kingdom. A fully grown male at 10 kilos has the equivalent bite to a 40 kilo dog. And each individual devil has its own unique white markings. This is similar to how we all have different fingerprints. Although 15% they're jet black, there's no white markings on them at all. There's one jet black devil here, I think it's that one in the middle there. And on rare occasions they have been seen with white spots all over their body, similar to a spotted-tailed quoll. And the white markings are like a form of camouflage, which help break down their whole figure at night time. They rely more on their sense of smell and hearing than they do on their eyesight. They can smell a food item up to 1 kilometre away in the bush, and they can detect slight vibrations with the whiskers on the side of their face, similar to cats and dogs. This aids when they come together for social feeds. Social feeding is a big part of their life, and it's one of the main times where they come together and work together to rip apart the carcass like a game of tug of war. The largest amount of devils seen feeding on a carcass in the wild was 22 individuals. They'll often attract each other to a carcass feeding by the vocalisations that they make. They can use up to 29 different vocalisations. It's also one of the main reasons they get their name, the devil. When the Europeans came to Tasmania in the 1800s, they didn't see the animal at first, but they heard the screeches, yells and bone crunching in the bush. They were petrified. They thought it was the size of a lion or a bear. It took them quite some time to discover that they were only the size of a small dog. In the wild, devils are quite shy and elusive creatures by nature, and if they smell or hear a person, they'll run away simply because we're much bigger than what they are. There has been one recorded attack, and that was over at Maroa Island. Someone was trying to hand feed a devil underneath a shack, and it didn't end up too well for them. They copped a severe bite on their hand due to the devil's powerful bite force. Breeding time for devils is around February and March, and during this time, when the female comes into estrus of heat, she'll pack on a fat deposit around her neck area to protect her from the male during breeding. They've been known to breed for up to 9 days. And during this time, the male will then guard the female, protect her from any intruding males. And then after the breeding, the tables turn, the female will snap out of this trance-like state that she's been in, and she'll drive the male out the den. He can take quite a bit to get out sometimes, and he's often left with a lump of scars on his back end. And you'll notice that in the enclosure next door, there's one male and 2 females in there, and the male here is scarring on his rump. But at this stage, these ones, they don't have too many scars yet, but you can definitely see how they end up with them. Sometimes females can dominate the males at feeding time, but it does just depend on the individuals. Sorry? A Joey. And 21 days later, the gestation period, the female will give birth to around 30 to 40 joeys, but she only has 4 teats inside the pouch, so a lucky 4 connect onto the teats. The teats expand, and she's connected to those teats until they're connected to those teats until they're around 3 to 4 months of age. Then they begin to open their eyes, develop their fur, And at 6 months of age, they're fully furred, their eyes are open, and they'll cling onto their mum's back. And they'll spend up to 1 year with their mother in the wild, then they'll disperse. They reach their full size and they're sexually mature at 2 years of age. And a female can have up to 3 breeding cycles throughout her lifetime. So she can have a maximum of 12 joeys throughout her life. Unfortunately, not all of these will make it to adulthood, as they can be picked off by predators. But joey devils are much more agile than the adults, and they can often get away from predators by climbing trees. And up in the trees, they've often been known to raid birds' nests. Down at ground level, they'll feed on small reptiles and frogs, spending a lot of time around lagoons and ponds. They're a member of the Joyride family amongst marsupials, and these include quolls, which we have 2 species of quoll in Tasmania, the eastern and the spotted-tailed quoll, the largest and the smallest. The smallest being the eastern and the largest being the spotted. And these rat-like looking creatures known as antechinus. Up until recently we only knew of 2 species of antechinus that inhabited the island. But in 2014 they discovered a new species of antechinus down on the Tasman Peninsula, just an hour's drive out of Hobart. Because of this recent find, it has given some people hope in refinding an extinct relative, the Tasmanian tiger or the thylacine, an animal that was around 25 kilos when fully matured, and for its body size had one of the largest jaw openings in the animal kingdom. It could open its jaws up to 90 degrees, and it would use this large powerful jaw to take down animals like kangaroos. But similar to the spotted-tailed quoll, though, it only eat the most nutritious parts. There'd often be a lot left behind for devils to scavenge on after a Tasmanian tiger made a kill. Quite a tragedy with what happened with that animal, though. The early settlers, they believed that they were a threat to their sheep flocks, and a bounty was put on the head of the Tasmanian tiger and the devil. Both species populations crashed. When the last wild Tasmanian tiger was trapped out on the west coast, the devil population was very low as well. The last captive Tasmanian tiger to die was 1936 down at Hobart. Although saying that, there's been over 500 reported sightings of the animal since it became extinct. Many of these sightings being along remote parts of the west coast and even up on the Australian mainland where they once were found. Same case with the devil. The devils were found right across the mainland at one point, but they estimated that they died out over there around 3,000 years ago. It was probably due to competition with predators like dingoes. But devils are an endangered animal due to a contagious cancer called devil facial tumour disease, or DFTD, which has wiped out 80% of the population since 1996, when it was first discovered in the northeast of the island by a Dutch naturalist who came down to study these animals. One evening he was looking at a group of devils feeding similar to this. He noticed one of them had a large growth on the side of its face. This was the first confirmed sighting of DFTD, although farmers in northeast Tasmania, they noticed a decline in devil populations as early as the mid-80s. It may have been around longer than what we've actually thought. It's one of very few contagious cancers that's ever existed. It spreads at feeding time. If there's one devil that has it, it can easily spread it to another 2 or 3. It has reached most parts of the island except for sections on the west coast due to the isolation. Well, really only the southwest now, because this year they've discovered it up in the northwest at Marrawa. But luckily there's been a lot done to help prevent devils ending up with DFTD. There's a program called Save the Tasmanian Devil, who back in 2012 released 28 devils from Aurora Island just off the east coast, which is like a natural safe haven for endangered animals. Before the devil arrived there were no natural ground-dwelling predators. The Cape Barren geese that you'll see around Natureworld, the grey birds with the bright green beak. They were nesting on the ground over at Marara Island. The devil are mostly scavengers, but they will hunt if they have the opportunity, and the geese population crashed. The devil numbers boomed, but over time the geese started to adapt and nest up into the trees, and nature balanced itself out. Now there's over 100 tumour-free devils at Marara Island. There's many breeding programs right throughout Tasmania and on the Australian mainland doing a great job to help preserve this iconic animal. Here at Natureworld, we have 50 devils in the park, along with a large free-range facility just beyond the estuary behind us at 25 acres and natural bushland. We often rotate the devils in Devil World to that large free range throughout their life, just to enrich it as much as possible being in captivity. There's also a good chance that DFTD will fade out as time progresses in the wild. We've already started to see an increase in the tumour-free population around Freycinet National Park. As the density of devils drop across the island, they don't come together for the social feeds. So the less social feeding, the less spreading.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining today, everyone. If you have any last questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your time at Natureworld.
Thank you, Rory.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you.